The year was 1945. The weight of the world hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that followed years of unrelenting conflict. The calendars turned to a new year, but the scars of the old one remained etched deep in the collective memory. The world was holding its breath, suspended between the horrors of the past and the uncertain promise of the future. Every nation, every city, every village had been touched by the long shadow of war. The globe, once a symbol of exploration and connection, now represented a fractured and wounded planet. Cities lay in ruins, monuments to a conflict that had consumed everything in its path. Once vibrant centers of culture and commerce, they were now skeletal remains, testaments to the destructive power of modern warfare. Fields were scarred, the fertile lands that once fed nations now pockmarked with craters and choked with debris. The very earth seemed to weep, bearing witness to the devastation inflicted upon it. And the silence after war was heavy with grief, a suffocating blanket that muffled the sounds of life and replaced them with the echoes of loss. The empty streets whispered stories of those who were gone, their voices forever silenced by the conflict. Soldiers returned home changed, their eyes haunted by the memories of battle, their hearts burdened by the weight of what they had seen and done. They were returning to a world that was both familiar and foreign, forever marked by their experiences. Families searched for the missing, clinging to the hope that their loved ones might still be alive, even as the odds grew slimmer with each passing day. Missing person boards became grim monuments to the countless individuals lost in the chaos of war. And children played in rubble, their innocence a stark contrast to the devastation that surrounded them. They found joy and laughter amidst the ruins, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable hardship. Tens of millions were dead, a staggering number that represented not just lives lost, but entire worlds extinguished. Row upon row of crosses and headstones stretched across the landscape, a silent reminder of the immense cost of war. Each number a stolen future, a life unlived, a potential unrealized. Empty chairs and abandoned belongings served as poignant reminders of the individuals who would never return. Even where fighting had ceased, the guns silenced and the treaties signed, peace felt fragile and uncertain, a delicate truce teetering on the edge of renewed conflict. The faces of civilians reflected this anxiety, etched with worry and doubt. Survivors emerged, blinking in the sunlight after years spent in the shadows, trying to rebuild from ruins, both physical and emotional, brick by brick, memory by memory. Haunted by what they'd endured, the trauma of war etched into their very souls. The thousand-yard stare became a common sight, a silent testament to the horrors witnessed. The challenge was clear: to rise from the ashes and create a better world. How to begin again, how to build a future from devastation, a future free from the scourge of war. Was this humanity's fate? To be forever trapped in a cycle of violence and destruction? To repeat cycles of destruction, each more devastating than the last? Was there no escape from this endless loop of conflict? The old ways had failed. The systems of governance and diplomacy that had been in place for centuries had proven inadequate to prevent the descent into global war. Power politics had led the world to the brink, fueled by nationalism, greed, and a thirst for dominance. Something new was needed, a radical shift in thinking, a new paradigm for international relations. Not just a ceasefire, a temporary cessation of hostilities, but a new way for nations to relate based on cooperation, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to peace. Across every capital, in the halls of power and in the hearts of ordinary citizens, a desperate question echoed. Could humanity learn from its mistakes? Could the world change, truly change, and break free from the chains of its past? The answer would shape the future, determining whether humanity would continue down the path of self-destruction or forge a new course towards lasting peace and prosperity. Out of despair, from the depths of unimaginable suffering, a new idea began to take root, a seed of hope planted in the fertile ground of shared experience. The world was ready to try, to embrace the possibility of a different future, to build a world where cooperation triumphed over conflict and peace reigned supreme. As leaders gathered in the aftermath of unimaginable destruction, the weight of the world rested heavily on their shoulders. They were tasked with nothing less than rebuilding civilization, forging a new path forward from the ashes of war. In their deliberations, they couldn't help but remember the League of Nations, a noble idea born of hope and idealism that ultimately failed to prevent another global catastrophe. Its shortcomings were glaring, its promises unfulfilled. Born in the wake of the Great War, World War I, a conflict so devastating it was meant to be the war to end all wars, the League was envisioned as a beacon of peace, a mechanism to resolve disputes through diplomacy and prevent future bloodshed. It was meant to end all wars. President Woodrow Wilson, a staunch advocate for international cooperation, dreamed of a world where disputes were settled by words and reasoned debate, not weapons and military might. He envisioned a future free from the horrors of war. But tragically, the League became a symbol of impotence, a well-intentioned but ultimately ineffective body. It was adept at condemning aggression and issuing strongly worded statements, but it was ultimately powerless to stop it. It lacked the teeth to enforce its resolutions and deter aggressors. The United States, whose own president had conceived it and championed its creation, never joined, a crippling blow to its legitimacy and authority. Without the participation of America, a rising global power, the League lacked the necessary legitimacy and strength to effectively address international crises. Britain and France, weakened by war and economic hardship, simply couldn't carry the burden of maintaining global peace alone. The League's ultimate failure to prevent the descent into World War II haunted the planners of 1945 as they gathered to create a new world order. They vowed with grim determination not to repeat its mistakes and to build a more effective and robust international organization. The new organization, the United Nations, would have real power, the authority to enforce its decisions and maintain global security. At its heart would be a Security Council, composed of the world's strongest nations, with the power to authorize military action. It would be pragmatic and grounded in reality, not just idealistic and aspirational. The lessons of the League's failure were painfully clear and served as a constant reminder of the challenges ahead. They understood that international cooperation, to be truly effective, needed teeth, a credible enforcement mechanism. The world, still reeling from the devastation of war, simply couldn't afford another noble failure. The stakes were too high. The United Nations would be built stronger, on a more solid foundation of collective security and shared responsibility. It was designed to be more resilient in the face of adversity and more effective in addressing the complex challenges of the post-war world. The dream of lasting peace, though tarnished by the failures of the past, would not be abandoned. It was a dream worth fighting for. This time, armed with the lessons of history and a renewed sense of purpose, they were determined to get it right. The future of the world depended on it. On April 25, 1945, a pivotal moment in history was about to unfold. The world looked to San Francisco, a city reborn from the ashes of the devastating 1906 earthquake and fire, a testament to resilience and the enduring spirit of its people. It was a symbol of hope, rising from the ruins, much like the world hoped to rise from the ruins of war. Delegates from 50 nations arrived, each carrying the weight of their nation's hopes and fears, their experiences of war etched into their faces. They were united by a single urgent purpose: to prevent another global catastrophe, to forge a path towards lasting peace after years of unimaginable conflict. The memory of past failures loomed large, fueling their determination. The city buzzed with a palpable mix of hope and gravity. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the weight of expectation. The war in Europe was finally ending, bringing much-needed relief, but the Pacific still burned fiercely, a stark reminder that the fight for global peace was far from over. This was no victory parade, no moment for unbridled celebration. It was a high-stakes gamble for the future, a delicate dance between nations with vastly different interests. San Francisco residents welcomed the delegates with a display of flags and heartfelt cheers, lining the streets to offer their support. They were sensing history in the making, recognizing the profound significance of the event unfolding in their city. They knew that the decisions made here would shape the world for generations to come. The conference officially opened at the War Memorial Opera House, a grand setting for such a momentous occasion. A breathtaking display of flags representing all participating nations formed a golden arc, symbolizing unity and shared purpose. But beneath the surface of unity, deep divisions remained, simmering tensions threatening to derail the entire process. Old rivalries, fresh wounds from the war, and fundamentally competing visions for the future created a complex and challenging environment. Yet, despite these obstacles, a powerful sense of determination prevailed, fueled by the collective desire to build a more peaceful world. The delegates felt the immense weight of responsibility, acutely aware of the millions lost in the war and the countless generations yet unborn whose fate rested in their hands. As Secretary of State Edward Stettinius formally opened the conference, his words resonated with hope and a call to action. He declared it their supreme task to rise above national interests and build a better world for all, a world free from the scourge of war. The hope was simple, yet profoundly powerful, a world where diplomacy triumphs over conflict, where cooperation replaces animosity. The world was watching with bated breath, every negotiation, every debate scrutinized by a global audience yearning for peace. The stakes had never been higher. The future of humanity hung in the balance, dependent on the decisions made within those walls. The future would be decided here, in the heart of San Francisco. The monumental work began, a testament to human resilience and the enduring pursuit of peace. For 2 months, San Francisco became the world's diplomatic center. Thousands worked day and night. Delegates, advisors, translators, journalists. The task turned a rough blueprint into a binding charter. Every word was debated, balancing sovereignty with collective action, power with equality. Small and middle powers, led by Australia, challenged the Big Five. Delegates from every continent argued, compromised, and learned from each other. The process was messy, but the world was coming together, one clause at a time. The idea of one world was becoming real. The biggest fight was over the veto. The Big Five insisted on it. Without the veto, they wouldn't join. Smaller nations saw it as undemocratic, power above principle. Australia's Herbert Evatt led the opposition, warning it would create 2 classes of nations. The debate nearly derailed the conference. The Soviets wanted the veto to block even discussion, a step too far. The conference stalled, the dream was in jeopardy. President Truman's envoy Harry Hopkins flew to Moscow for a last-ditch appeal. Stalin relented. The veto would not block discussion, only action. The compromise was imperfect, but it saved the United Nations. The world would move forward, messy, but united. The dream survived. The spirit of 1945 lived in the voices of the delegates. Virginia Gildersleeve reminded all the charter was only an instrument. Its power depended on the will to use it. War-torn nations pleaded for a strong organization, born from lived suffering. John Masaryk of Czechoslovakia urged, "Let us please give it a chance." Carlos Romulo of the Philippines fought for self-determination and human rights. "Let us make this floor the last battlefield." The great powers balanced hope with realism. Senator Vandenberg called the veto a necessary evil. The charter was a compromise, a bridge between the world as it was and as it could be. The delegates spoke for the lost and for the future. Their words echoed with hope and warning. The world was listening. On June 26, 1945, the work was done. Delegates gathered in the Herbst Theater to sign the Charter of the United Nations. The blue-bound document was a product of debate, argument, and compromise. One by one, representatives of 50 nations signed, a pageant of global unity. Dr. Wellington Koo of China signed first, honoring China's long struggle. Each signature was a promise: peace, justice, human rights, cooperation. When the last name was signed, the hall erupted in applause. President Truman called it a great instrument for peace and security, but he warned, if we fail to use it, we betray those who died for this moment. The charter was a beginning, not an end. The world had chosen hope. The charter was more than a treaty. It was a declaration for all people. Its preamble began, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war." The charter created the General Assembly, the Security Council, and the Economic and Social Council. It recognized that peace required justice, prosperity, and human rights. For the first time, fundamental human rights were enshrined in international law. The charter was imperfect, a product of compromise and power politics, but its vision was revolutionary. Cooperation over conflict, dialogue over destruction. 50 nations agreed on a shared future. They built a house for humanity. The world had a new foundation. The United Nations' birth was a beginning, not an end. The Cold War soon tested its ideals, and the UN faced failures and frustrations. Yet it became a forum for dialogue, a symbol of hope, and a champion of decolonization. Its agencies saved millions. Its peacekeepers protected the vulnerable. Today, new challenges threaten the order the founders built. The UN is flawed, slow, and imperfect, but a world without it is unimaginable. The lesson of 1945 endures. The UN is a tool, not a cure-all. It is a promise, not a guarantee. It reflects our world, divided but capable of cooperation and compassion. Even in darkness, humanity can choose hope. That is the UN's enduring legacy.